Welcome to TORAH Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 45 of TNT, Twisted New Testament, with Rabbi Stuart and Federow from Houston, Texas. Tonight's hot topic is going to be the Christmas story, contradictions. So you're going to want to sit tight, keep a close eye on everything. What's my updates trying to do? I don't want an update. Let's snooze this baby. Isn't it weird how the timing of all these things are just so precise? Love it. Okay, so let me, Rabbi, good to see your smiling face again. Smile.
Yay, good to see you. Always is.
There we go. Give me a second. I got to get rid of this Windows updates. People on Facebook can see it, but people on YouTube can't. Let me see. Snooze. Remind me tonight. Yeah, let's just say snooze. Go away so we can actually record. Okay, we're looking good here. And so, so welcome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this moment now to let everybody know on Facebook land, I'm going to leave this connected for a little while. Like I said, if you really want a more professional view, go to YouTube. Just look up YouTube and TORAH Talk. And also, you need to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Even if you have, click the little button next to the subscribe button. There's a little bell. You want to turn on notifications. That way, if I never advertise another show, the moment I click record, you will get alerted on an email saying, hey, William's up to something, right? If you don't get those alerts already, that means you have not turned on the notifications or you haven't subscribed or both. So with that said, let me put you back here so you can actually see what's happening here. I'll prop it just ever so slightly right there. Okay, now I think it's propped correctly. That screen is the one you want. That's good. Okay, cool. Okay, so again, we'll leave the YouTube live going on for just a few more minutes. Maybe 10, 15. If it goes the whole hour, it's probably because I forgot to shut it off. So, okay, so Rabbi, this is going to be a really interesting night tonight, and I love your plan. And so we are going to do, just like the title has declared, we're going to take the Christmas story, primarily from Matthew. And again, this is all Rabbi's setup. He's laid this out for me, so I know exactly how to follow him along. He's going to tell you about the Matthew story and show you all the variations through the Gospels, and also take us into the prophets and find out why is it problematic. So what better time to actually do that than now? So welcome.
Exactly. Well, thank you. It's good to be here. Always is with you.
Very, very good. Very good. Very good. Let me make sure I've got my sound. All right. So, okay. So, I had an alert earlier saying that my internet speed was not too hot. And so if we hear any sound muffling or gargling, maybe it's because my internet speed is still struggling. We've had a little bit of weather. We got a front coming in. I don't know what all that means in tech land, except I watch a little green. When it turns yellow, that's all I know. I know colors. I don't know tech. So, okay. Well, Rabbi, first tell us how your week has been, and how are you doing now?
Hey, everything's doing fine. Just plugging away. Had a very busy Shabbat weekend. Friday night we had a family service. Saturday morning we had what's called an ufruf, which is a honor given to the couple for their up-and-coming wedding. Sunday was a full day with me teaching confirmation and a class on the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Scriptures. We finished Job. We're almost at the end of Ecclesiastes, which is my favorite book of the Bible. Oh, wow. And then we go to Psalms and Proverbs and Song of Songs. So,
wow, wonderful.
Busy weekend.
Sounds like it. You're just a busy guy altogether. So, okay, and so good news for all you TNT fans out there. I'm pretty sure that we're going to pick back up on every week shows, unless something just comes up to where I can't on any given week, or vice versa, or like even Rabbi, if something comes up where he can't. But I think I do definitely want to get back onto an every week schedule. The every other week was working good on certain aspects, but it just seems like every week is going to be the best combination. So we're going to give it our best, and we'll see what happens. All right, with all that said, Rabbi, I guess let's kick this baby off, and let's talk about us a Christmas story.
All right, well, if you listen to the Christian community when they talk about the Christmas story, and you hear them give the Christmas story on specials or whatever, what they're telling as the Christmas story is a conglomeration of facts, or whatever you want to call them, taken from Matthew and Luke and kind of pushed all together, ignoring the other facts. They're also in Matthew and Luke that contradict each other and contradict what they want to tell you about the Christmas story. But if you take a look at every single fact or every single historical event, or I don't know how else to put it, in Matthew and in Luke, and try to make a single narrative that combines every one of those facts, it can't be done because they contradict each other.
Right.
You can't have it both ways.
So you're saying that they're not different vantage points. They're absolute blatant contradictions. They're not like different
absolute
viewpoints.
Blatant contradictions between each other.
Okay, because
we'll see why this happens tonight, actually.
Because the entire church community is saying no, they're not. They're actually just different vantage points. So how do you tell a person who argues that point what the difference between a vantage point is and a contradiction? I mean, it seems pretty simple, but
first of all, let's go ahead.
No. That's all I want to do. Explain the difference between a blatant contradictions and a different viewpoint from a vantage point.
A different viewpoint. They usually use the example of a car crash. Okay. One might say the car was going 60. One might say, it was going 30. One might say it was going fast. It was going slow, but it was still moving.
Right.
The blatant contradiction would be, oh no, he was stopped he was completely stopped. He happened to be in the middle of the intersection, but he stopped.
Right.
And somebody said, oh no, he was racing through. That's a problem that cannot be solved. Okay,
right.
A person may judge differently, like the speed they're going, but the fact that they're moving can't be contradicted. If it is, you've got a major problem with your witnesses.
Right.
One might say, oh, it's dark blue. The other would say, well, it looked black to me, but it's still a very dark color. If one said, oh, no, it was a bright orange, and the other one said, no, it was a very dark black, there's a problem.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so now that's been clarified, let's move forward. I think that's a pretty obvious point that even the skeptic watching the show should at least be able to admit to that truth. So with that said,
I would hope.
Okay.
Now, what we're going to find out in the book of Matthew and comparing it with the book of Luke.
Hey, Rabbi, do me a favor.
First of all,
Rabbi, do me a favor real fast, just to rule this out, because it is sounding a little garbled. I can hear you fine, but it's definitely noticeable. Hang up and let me call you right back and see if that clears this because there's an internet connection happening, but it doesn't look like it is from my side because I've got full green everywhere. But it could be in Houston. I'm not sure, but let's hang up and let me call you right back and see if that clears it up. Okay?
Wow. Okay. Sure.
Okay, we're going to try this real fast because it sounds really garbled on the Skype call. So we'll see if this fixes it. If it does, great. If it doesn't, we're going to push through. Pardon me. Okay.
I hope that's better.
We'll find out. Sounds good so far. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you fine.
Oh, I hear you better actually now. Maybe it's just a bad connection in the beginning. Okay, cool.
All right. Well,
let's roll with
hope
this.
Maybe that can be edited out of the...
Nah, it's nothing to worth edit out. That's good. You're good. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, so all right, I've got all my text prompts ready to click on. So you just let me know where to go and when to go there, and I'll follow you along.
First, let's start out talking about the books in general.
Okay.
Any Christian scholar, any scholar at all, anybody who knows anything about the four Gospels knows that the book of Mark came first.
Right.
Mark, then Matthew, then Luke, then John. And Matthew and Luke aren't that far apart from each other. Mark comes along and has no birth story of Jesus. There's nothing there about the birth of Jesus. All of a sudden, Jesus is an adult. He's walking along, and boom, he gets baptized by John the Baptist. Mark 7 and following, you don't have to put that up there. Okay. All right. We'll come back to this. Okay. But the Jewish community is going to hear this story according to the book of Mark, and they're going to say, wait a minute. All the famous people in the Bible had very special birth story. if this Jesus is somebody important, why doesn't he have a very fancy birth story? I mean, Samson,
Oh, yeah, right.
his mother prayed for him, his existence, and the whole scene with Samuel the prophet, I believe, and with Moses, you had the sea of reeds, and he's in a basket and gets found by the princess, daughter of Pharaoh. Abraham and Sarah, miracle birth because Sarah was so much older.
Now you know what's fixing to happen, right?
I'm sorry, what?
I said, now you know what's fixing to happen, right? You had the 3 wise men who spotted a star 10 million light years
wait,
up in the sky.
We'll get to the star. Okay, we're going to get to all of this.
Okay,
it might be a very long evening, but we're going to get to all of this.
We can go late. I've already scheduled my work tomorrow to be later than normal, so if we need to go for 2 hours tonight, I'm in for the ride. Let's go.
All right. Well, the thing is that Mark has no birth story of Jesus. Matthew hears the complaints about the story according to Mark, so he invents birth stories about Jesus, and he uses as his model, which we've said earlier in earlier shows, that he used the birth of Moses as a model, and not just the birth of Moses, but Moses himself as a model for Jesus' stories. Okay, so for the very beginning, you have to understand that there are differences between Matthew and Luke. You have Mark has no birth story. Matthew has a birth story. Luke has a birth story, and John also has no birth story.
Interesting.
We'll get to all of this, but there's interesting things about just that alone. We'll get to that later, I hope. Okay. Number one, you have to understand, you have to see in the text that Matthew, what's the ambiance? What is the mood of the country according to Matthew? According to Matthew, everybody's living in fear.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get to these verses, but Matthew's ambiance, everybody's living in fear. In Matthew, there's a story of the star, a magical star. Okay, now, I'm probably going to get this mixed up because the way you're facing me and how the cameras work, but if I get this wrong, you'll correct me, okay?
Okay.
According to the Matthew story, all right, according to the Matthew story, they start out in Bethlehem, okay? They go to Egypt, okay, which would be to the west,
okay,
and then they wind up coming back to the land of Israel, settling in Nazareth. So they start in Bethlehem, they go to Egypt, they come up to Bethlehem.
Okay.
To Nazareth.
Right.
Bethlehem, Egypt, to Nazareth. However, in the Luke story, they start in Nazareth in the north, come down to Bethlehem, and then go back up to Nazareth. Nothing is said, spoken, written, mentioned, anything about going into Egypt. Okay, you follow that?
Yep.
Okay. Next thing. According to the book of Matthew, there are wise men who come to visit Jesus at his birth in Bethlehem. According to Matthew, it's shepherds.
Oh, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And more, the funniest thing of all, I think it's funny, is that why in Matthew were they in Bethlehem and why in Luke were they in Bethlehem? The reason why in Matthew they're in Bethlehem is because that's where they're from. They're living in their house.
Okay.
There's no need. They're living in Bethlehem. Okay. They eventually have to leave their home, go to Egypt, and come up to Nazareth. There's no reason for an inn. There's no reason to be told we have no room in the inn, you have to live in the barn. There's no reason to put Jesus into a manger.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
They're home.
Right.
But in Luke, since they're starting in Nazareth, they come down to Bethlehem for a really dumb reason, and then they go back, and because they're visiting in Nazareth, they're coming from Nazareth because they're visiting in Bethlehem, they have to have a hotel to stay in, and there's no room in the hotels, and so they go into a barn.
Right.
These are very distinct things, among others, that cannot be reconciled between the two versions.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. Now let's take a look at Matthew, and
Okay.
For this, I'm hoping you can put this up on
Yes,
the
I can. We'll do
on the
that.
screen.
I
Okay.
sure will. You got it. Matthew 1:18 coming around.
Matthew beginning with chapter 8, begin with chapter 1, but beginning with 18.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, Christians will say, oh, well, you have to understand the reason why the differences between Luke and Matthew is because Matthew was 2 years later.
2?
Yes, they'll say 2 years later that Jesus was already a toddler.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Running.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm sorry?
I got you. I thought you meant the story of Matthew was written 2 years later.
No.
Oh, okay.
The story about Jesus is where he's now 2 years old.
Toddler, right. Got it.
Okay. And this is simply not true because the text doesn't bear that out.
Okay.
In Matthew chapter 1, verse 18, it explicitly says, now the birth of Jesus Christ came about this way. Or, now the birth of Jesus Christ was on this wise. However it's translated, it's explicitly stating this is about the birth of Jesus.
Good point.
Okay? If you want to skip forward, okay, you can go to Matthew chapter 2, also verse 1.
Okay.
Okay? And Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 explicitly states it's about the birth.
Right.
Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, we're still in Matthew, we're still talking about the birth, not when he's a toddler 2 years later.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So, understand that the whole Matthew story, there's this fear lingering over everybody. Okay? So, each time we get to the verse of, the statement of importance, let's go back to Matthew chapter 1 again, verse 18.
Okay. All right, let me see. Right here and here. Okay, got it.
Okay. Let's look at this together.
Okay.
Now, the birth of Jesus Christ was on this wise, or happened this way.
Okay.
When as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privately. But while he thought on these things, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. Okay, this is Matthew chapter 1. Everything that comes up before now is genealogies.
Okay.
So all of a sudden in Matthew, who does the angel talk to tell that person the revelation, okay, the announcement, the annunciation that Mary is going to give birth to the Messiah, to Jesus, to the Christ? It's told to Joseph.
Right.
Well, if you go to Luke, it's told to Mary.
So in Matthew, it doesn't say anywhere where he was talking to Mary?
Not that I know of.
Okay, gotcha.
Take a look. Maybe you can show it to me.
Right. I just never,
Right.
I've never noticed it either way, so I'm figuring.
But that shows you the differences that cannot be reconciled.
Wow.
It's either the angel told Mary, hey, Mary, God's going to make you pregnant whether you like it or not. Oh, you like it? Oh, fine. But even if you didn't, this is what's going to happen. Okay. But in Matthew, God is speaking to Joseph, the angel, is speaking to Joseph and says to Joseph, hey, look, we know you're upset because she's already pregnant, but keep her as your wife because what's conceived in her came from God. Okay. And by the way, keep in mind that either way, they are told from the beginning, during the pregnancy, that this is from God. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Mainly because, if I remember, we'll talk about it at the end of Matthew. At the end of Luke, Jesus is teaching in the temple, and Jesus is teaching in the temple, and Joseph and Mary can't even understand why he's there. Excuse me, weren't you told that this was from God?
Yeah.
That God is his father? And when he says to you, I'm doing the work of my Father, why couldn't you understand what that means? Because you knew from the beginning that Jesus' Father was God.
Right.
Anyway, I hope we remember to talk about that
Okay.
at least a little bit more length.
Got it.
Okay. So the angel comes to Joseph
All right, where we at?
in Matthew.
18.
I'm sorry?
Where we at? 18 still? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or 19.
19-ish. All right, got it. Okay.
Okay. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privately. But while he thought on these things, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is in the Holy Spirit. So verse 21. And she shall bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus.
What happened to Emmanuel?
Exactly. For he shall save his people from their sins. And then it goes on to say, now all this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, quote, behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us.
That's
now,
weird.
Look,
it's like two verses back to back just contradicted us. He called him Jesus, but this is to be fulfilled that he should be called Emmanuel.
Exactly. To fulfill a verse where it says his name would be Emmanuel,
right?
They call his name Jesus. Okay, and I don't want to get bogged down with the virgin birth. That's a totally different podcast or video or whatever. Okay. But the important thing is that he's supposed to be called Emmanuel. He is never called Emmanuel in the entire New Testament.
Right.
I don't think even the word Emmanuel appears except right here in the entire New Testament, but I haven't checked that out.
Right, gotcha.
Okay. The problem, of course, is interpreting that or translating Emmanuel as God with us. People don't remember that Hebrew names are given to human beings, but the Hebrew name itself is a statement made about God.
Right.
So it's not saying that Jesus, who otherwise would be called Emmanuel, that Jesus is God with us. It's God is with us. In the Hebrew, you have to add the word, to translate to English, you have to add the word is or was. Okay? God, Immanuel, God is with us. So it's a name given to a human. The guy's name is Emmanuel. But what the word means is God is on our side. God is with us. And if you go to the context of Isaiah 7:14, you'll see that this is what's talking about. Okay. Then Joseph, being raised from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord had bidden him. He took unto him his wife and didn't know her until she brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. Again, never using the word Emmanuel.
Right.
Okay. Now we get to Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 23. Okay?
Okay.
And here's where all the interesting stuff takes place. Because you're going to get the feeling that the people were living in fear, that it was not a good time, that something was going on that would be very scary or keep the people on their toes. So, Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. So look at what's happening. Jesus was born. It's his birth. It's not 2 years later. It's at his birth. Okay?
Okay.
This part I find hysterically funny. Okay. Verse 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east. Wait a minute.
From the east, right.
They're in the east, but they saw his star in the east. So did that mean it took 2 years to go all the way around the earth to the other direction? If they were in the east, wouldn't they have seen the star in the west?
Interesting.
So what does it even mean to say we saw his star in the east? And by the way, how far is the distance between that star and the surface of the earth?
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to get to that. And for this, I wish I had a cartoon to be able to show you what they're saying.
You know what? You know what I think? I have a little drone. Well, I was at a job site one time. I had the drone way up in the sky. It was probably only about 100 feet. But even at 100 feet up in the air, I had a hard time telling exactly where, if it was to drop out of the sky, even at 100 feet, I would have no clue where it would land.
Right.
So,
you could, and by the way, if it was going to be right over Bethlehem, okay, you got the earth here, you got the people in the east, and the star is, well, it says in the east, but let's say it's in the west.
Right.
It's in the sky. It's way over here. It's not, right over the earth.
Right.
It's, yeah. Okay. So
That's interesting. Yeah. Good
very
point.
funny.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Very interesting.
But hey, when people read this, they go, ooh, wow. They knew about him in advance.
Wow.
Okay. Now here we go with verse 3 in Matthew chapter 2, where it starts the fear. Okay. You get indications of the fear. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. So Matthew is now painting a picture of the people of Israel where there's a problem. There's fear in the air. Okay? And verse 4, and when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. Demanded of them. Not, hey, by the way, where's this Christ guy going to be born?
Right.
Where, you tell me where's... Okay, that's furthers the fear of the people. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor and shall rule my people Israel. This is a reference to Micah, where he's saying that King David was born in Bethlehem, littlest of towns, insignificant little place.
Oh, yeah.
But out of David, all kings will come. So it's not saying that the Messiah has to be born in Bethlehem. What it's saying is that the Messiah's lineage will bring you back to Bethlehem. King David was from Bethlehem. The Messiah is to be born of King David, from the lineage of King David. So it's not really saying that the Messiah has to be born in Bethlehem. By the way, remember that according to the book of Acts, there were at least two people who were thought to have been the Jewish Messiah. Okay, Judah the Galilean and Theodos. I'm probably mispronouncing the Greek, but the Theodos. Not anywhere did they claim they were born in Bethlehem.
Interesting.
The idea that you have to be born in Bethlehem to be the Messiah is just simply nonsense. There have been 14 messiahs, false messiahs, people who had a Jewish following that the Jews thought the guy they were following was really going to be the real Messiah. Not any one of them said, oh yeah, I was born in Bethlehem.
Right.
So Jews have never believed the Messiah is to be born in Bethlehem. Okay. But again, it's contributing to the fear, the image, this nuance or ambiance of fear. Okay. They said unto him in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and it goes into that. Verse 7. Okay. Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared, and he sent them to Bethlehem. Wait a minute. You have the wise men in the east who have this magical star that they're following, but this magical star takes them to Jerusalem to see Herod? Why didn't the star go immediately over Bethlehem, whatever over means, which we just discussed?
Right.
Okay. Why did it go to Jerusalem first? The answer is there were no magi. There were no, wise men coming to visit Bethlehem, coming to visit Jesus. They were made up to give Herod information. They're a literary gimmick. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense to have these wise men following this magical star that leads them to the wrong place, takes them to Jerusalem first, and then they have to go down to Bethlehem. Why didn't they go just straight to Bethlehem? Okay. So Herod asked them, when did the star appear? Okay. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when you have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. And when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east, we already went over that problem, went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. Two things have to be said here. The Greek for the word young child, okay, is paidion or something like that. Okay, properly, it's referring to an infant in the Greek, not a 2-year-old toddler, but an infant.
Okay.
Okay, and it's in the Greek, according to Strong, is that it's the diminutive form of the word for boy. Diminutive means he's a baby. Okay. Now, having said that, okay, so now they depart to go follow the star, which they saw in the east. Now it should be somewhere slightly south because Bethlehem is, look it up on a map. Okay. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they came into the house, they saw the young child. Again, it's the same pahidon, whatever the word is in Greek, with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, again, it's this feeling of fear. Fear pervades the story of Matthew. They departed to their own country another way. Now let's talk about something else. Notice that they come into their house.
Right.
This is verse 11.
Okay.
Mary and Joseph were from Bethlehem. They have their own house in Bethlehem. They have no need for a hotel, for an inn. They have no need to be told the inn is full, you'll have to sleep in the barn. They have no need to have Jesus in a manger because they're in their own home.
Right.
The whole idea of this is a totally foreign concept to Matthew. Okay, we'll get to this when we get to Luke too. Okay, so they get warned of God to not go back to Herod, and they leave, and they leave. Okay, verse 13. Okay, chapter 2, verse 13. Okay. When they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and flee. See, now it's flee. That's another sign of how the ambiance was fear.
Pardon me.
Okay,
Right.
They're flee into Egypt, and be there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son.
Okay, so where does that come from?
It comes from Hosea, but give me a second.
Oh, okay.
The point is that they are trying to come up with an excuse of why they can't just go stay in Bethlehem, and they're having they're creating this image of a prophecy that Jesus fulfills by going into Egypt and then coming out of Egypt. And they claim that this is a specific statement made by a prophet as a prophecy, as it says in verse 15, spoken of the Lord, spoken of Jesus. But if you take a look at Hosea chapter 11, verse 1, okay, take a look at Hosea chapter 11, verse 1.
Okay, got it. Let's see. There it is right there. Sorry about that.
No, not a problem.
Okay.
I hope usually you and I talk to each other. I hope people aren't getting bored because usually it's you and me having fun.
Oh, we can still have fun.
All right. Okay, so do you have Hosea 11:1 up?
Hosea 11:1 is up right now.
Okay. Hosea 11 chapter 1 says, When Israel was a child, then I loved him, and out of Egypt have I called my son.
Okay.
So first of all, the statement Hosea is making that Matthew quotes in verse 15 of Matthew 2, okay, comes from Hosea, and it explicitly is referring to Israel as a child. What is that all about? Israel became the people of Israel at Mount Sinai when they were having the exodus out of slavery from Egypt. So when they were at Sinai, okay, when they came out of Egypt to become a nation, that would be the childhood of Israel, the people, the nation. Okay? And so the reference there in Hosea chapter 11, verse 1 is explicitly about the people of Israel in their youth as a nation, which means at the Exodus. And the out of Egypt have I called my son is obviously a reference to the Exodus.
Right.
Okay, but where does Hosea get the audacity to call Israel a child of God? When Israel was a child, I loved him. Where does Hosea get this audacity to say that Israel was God's son? And the answer is Exodus chapter 4, verse 22 and 23. Can you put that up?
It's up now.
Good, thank you. And so Exodus chapter 4, verse 22 and 23 reads, this is God telling Moses what to say to Pharaoh to get Pharaoh to let my people go. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus says the Eternal, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say to you, this is Moses speaking to Pharaoh, let my son go that he may serve me, and if you refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay your son, even your firstborn, which is exactly what happens.
Right.
Okay, so Hosea is referring to the people of Israel in their childhood as a nation as a specific reference to the Exodus coming out of Egypt. And he calls Israel the firstborn son of a God because in Exodus, God explicitly calls the people of Israel God's firstborn son. Clear?
Clear. Crystal.
Okay. All right. But you've got all of these nuances going on that's in fear. So now let's go back to Matthew chapter 2, verse 16.
Okay. 2:16, got it.
Okay. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So first of all, the wise men would have known he was a newborn. They tell, according to the story, they tell this to Herod, and Herod doesn't know how old they are either, so he kills everybody 2 years old and under. Okay, if this had already been taken place 2 years after Jesus was born, which is the excuse they'll give of why Matthew was different from Luke, they'd have just said, kill all the 2-year-olds. They wouldn't have said kill the 2-year-olds and under. They'd have said kill the 2-year-olds because they would have known how old he was.
Right, good point.
So the text explicitly is saying that this is at the birth, not 2 years older.
Right.
It's using language about Jesus that he was a infant, not a toddler, walking around on 2 feet like a 2-year-old would do. Okay, and then look at what it says in verse 17 of Matthew 2. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, in Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they are not. So this is supposed to be a fulfillment of a verse in Jeremiah the prophet where Rachel is weeping for her children because of all the children killed in and near Bethlehem by Herod. What's the problem with this? It's the wrong part of the country. You remember how when the Jews settled the land, okay, each tribe got its own area of land of the promised land. Mm-hmm. Wrong mother. The people in Bethlehem, Judah, would not have had Rachel weeping for them. They'd have had Leah weeping for them.
Interesting. Wow.
Look, don't believe me, look it up for yourself.
Right.
So they're grabbing this quotation about, hey, a woman's crying about losing her children. Let's use that to talk about Jesus and the time where Herod supposedly went after the children of Bethlehem and the coast, and in all the coast thereof, the text says. By the way, there is not a single Roman historian who mentions anything about killing all the children born in the Bethlehem and all the coast thereof. There's not a single mention of Herod doing this.
That's another interesting thing in general about the New Testament. With so many, with the dynamics of the New Testament, the way the story's told, and how immaculate everything is, and how everything was such miracles and stuff. You would think that somewhere in history there would be somebody
So,
besides the little paragraph Josephus supposedly wrote about all these events that took place. And why is it that only in the New Testament can you find these stories?
exactly. It is in history. It's stories made up to make it look like Jesus fulfilled prophecy.
Gotcha.
Okay. And we'll get to that very soon, by the way.
Right.
Okay. So here you have this passage, okay, which is supposed to be about a woman weeping for her kids because of all the kids who were murdered by Herod. It's not even the right mother. It's not even the right
Interesting. Wow.
person to quote. Okay. Now verse 19.
Okay.
But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. Okay, you got this on screen?
Got it.
Okay, but when Herod, verse 19, but when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Remember again, it's all about fear.
Right.
The nuance, the ambiance of the people was fearful. Notwithstanding being warned of God in a dream. Wait a minute. What does it mean being warned of a dream? God just said it's okay for you to go back to Israel. Oh no, it's not okay. Go to Galilee. Why all of a sudden, why didn't God tell Joseph in the dream, go straight to Nazareth, don't go back to Galilee because I know Archelaus is already there or going to be there. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yep. Nonsense.
Okay.
Again, it's just...
Exactly. It's all made up stories. Just say it so it sounds nice. Don't think about how factual it can be. It doesn't jive with everything else.
Right.
Okay, now we get verse 23. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. And in every English translation, the statement, he shall be called a Nazarene, is set apart in some way to make it look like it's a quotation from a prophet.
Right.
There is no quotation anywhere of any prophet, anywhere in the Tanakh, anywhere in the prophets, anywhere in the Tanakh, where the statement, he shall be called a Nazarene, is to be found.
Right.
And they'll say, oh, well, you don't understand. Nazarene is like the word netzer, which means branch, and Jesus is the branch of King David. Excuse me. The text reads that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, he shall be called a Nazarene, meaning that a prophet said, he shall be called a Nazarene. Show me the verse in the prophets in the Tanakh.
Right.
It's not there.
It doesn't exist. Right.
Another example of how they make up a verse and then create a story, invent a story to make it look like Jesus fulfilled that verse.
Right.
So here we have seen where the nuance of the people is in fear. There's a star of Bethlehem which has its own problems, because if they're in the east, they saw a star in the east. Does that mean that they were further out in the east and the star was closer to Jerusalem, but between Jerusalem and the east? In which case, how low to the ground was it? Wouldn't it burn up the earth? Okay, if it was in the sky, it would be,
True.
All right. In the Matthew version, they go from Bethlehem to Egypt to Nazareth. Okay, Matthew has wise men, magi. Magi, like the word magician, people who can, see the future, who know that the child's going to be born and go to see him as a baby. And he's in they're in their home city. They don't have to go to an inn. There's no inn story, no room in the inn, no manger, no nothing, because they're already in their home. So these are, you can't contradict this. You can't say, oh, well, that's just witnesses who didn't know any better.
Right.
You cannot write a story that incorporates all of the facts of Matthew into a single narrative with all the facts of Luke because of the contradictions between the two. Okay, before we get to Luke, though, I just want you to see in Mark that Mark chapter 1, verse 7, there's no birth story of Jesus. He begins as an adult. He's walking around. John the Baptist says, "Oh, here he comes." And he baptizes him, and that's the beginning of his ministry, according to the book of Mark.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and John the Baptist is who it's talking about. And he preached, saying, "There comes one mightier than I after me, the latchet of whose shoes I'm not worthy to stoop down and unloose. I indeed have baptized you with water, but he shall baptize you with the Holy Spirit." And it came to pass in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth to Galilee. No mention of Bethlehem, no mention of going into Egypt and coming out.
Wait, so
just going.
Where are we at right now in Matthew? Chapter 3?
I'm sorry, we're in Mark chapter 1, verse 7.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was trying to follow you and it didn't work. Pardon me. Mark 7. Did we pull that one up? I think we did, right?
Yeah, we did. We have it there.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Here it is. Yep, got it. Okay, so so verse 7. Go ahead.
Chapter 1, verse 7.
Okay.
And John the Baptist is doing the preaching. He says, "There comes one mightier than I after me, the latchet of his shoes I'm not worthy to stoop down and unloosen. I indeed have baptized you with water, but he shall baptize you with the Holy Spirit." And it came to pass in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized of John in Jordan. No mention of Bethlehem, no mention of going out to Egypt and then coming back into Nazareth. He's just walking around, and Jesus says, "Here he is, that's the guy." And he baptized John in the Jordan. But John baptized him in the Jordan. Verse 10, "And straightway coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens open, and the Spirit like a dove descended upon him. And there came a voice from heaven saying, 'Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased.'" Now, a couple of things about this. Mark, as we've said, was the first gospel to have been written. It gave rise to an early heresy of the church called adoptionism. And you can look this up, Google it. Okay. This was based on the book of Mark, where Jesus is walking around and all of a sudden he gets baptized, and then a dove, or the Spirit like a dove, descends on him, and a voice from heaven says, "You're my son. I'm well pleased with you." It's like Jesus was a human being like any other person, and God adopted him as God's son. Said, "I pick you. You're now my son. Thou art my beloved son." Okay, and it gave rise to an early heresy, a heresy of the early church called adoptionism, which of course was squelched and precluded by the invention of the Matthew and Luke stories of the birth of Jesus. But according to Mark, there's no birth story. Jesus begins as an adult. Okay?
Got it.
Okay, now we're going to take a look at Luke.
Okay.
Luke is probably, the details of Luke are the ones that are most known by the stories that circulate at Christmas time about the birth of Jesus, about Christmas. So take a look at Luke chapter 2, verse 1.
Got it.
Okay. We're going to find out in the Luke story that it's a time of peace. It's a time of tranquility. You don't have people running here and there afraid of Herod and all this. I don't even think there's a mention of Herod in this passage. We'll see it if there is or not. Okay. You've got shepherds who are in the fields with their sheep. It's a tranquil ambiance. It's a very peaceful time. Okay. In Luke, there is no Star of Bethlehem mentioned, which is pretty interesting, because you'd expect some sort of earth-shattering, star that shines all of a sudden to be mentioned by Luke,
right,
somewhere in Luke. Okay. As I said, it's shepherds instead of wise men go to visit Jesus. Okay. Again, they have this myth that the Messiah has to be born in Bethlehem, but Jesus was known as Jesus of Nazareth, so they have to have an excuse of why he was known as Jesus of Nazareth, but he was born in Bethlehem like the Messiah is supposed to be. So the way Luke does it is they go from Nazareth to Bethlehem back to Nazareth. Okay? And because they were coming to Bethlehem but living in Nazareth, they needed a hotel, an inn, and that's where you get the whole no room at the inn. They had to stay in a barn, and he was placed into a manger, the trough that cattle and horses eat out of, because of the soft hay that would have been placed in there. Totally different facts according to Luke than we found in Matthew. So now let's take a look at this Luke story. Okay. Chapter 2. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every one to his own city. What? William, where were you born?
In a hospital. I'm just kidding. In a barn. No, I'm just kidding. In Oklahoma. Texas.
In Oklahoma?
Yeah. Texas.
Where was your wife born?
Obviously in Oklahoma, if I was born in Oklahoma, right? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Where was she born?
She was born in Chicago.
Right. You would have to go back to Oklahoma. I think you said Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
Okay. She'd have to go back to Chicago. What sense does it make? Okay. Your kids, were they all born in Kingsland?
No, definitely not.
So would each child have to go to a different city in which he was born just to be counted in a census,
right.
just to be able to be taxed?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever that they have to go to their home city to be counted in a census in order to have the right tax.
Right.
Makes no sense.
Right.
Okay. So Joseph, this is verse 4, went up from the Galilee out of the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of King David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. Verse 6. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them at the inn. Okay. No mention of this. No mention of coming down. No need for an inn in the Matthew story.
Right.
And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flocks by night. This tranquil view, everything's nice, everything's in its place. There's complete peace everywhere. It's a contrast with the fear found in Matthew. Okay, verse 9. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, to the shepherds, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said to them, Do not fear, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger.
Interesting. That's really sad, because if that was the sign to you, plural, if that's the case, then every story would document this.
Exactly.
Right.
And Matthew would have talked about a manger as the sign. And remember their statement, but this was 2 years later. Well, if this was 2 years later, then why somewhere in the book of Luke do we have no mention of them even going into Egypt?
Right, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. I mean,
and we'll get to this in a minute. Well, let me say it now, and that is, excuse me, and that is that if Matthew says going into Egypt was to fulfill a prophecy, and out of Egypt I called my son, then according to Luke, Jesus never fulfilled that prophecy because he was never in Egypt. So if Matthew is true, that there was a prophecy of going into Egypt and coming out of it, then according to Luke, he never fulfilled that prophecy. How could he be the Messiah if the Messiah has to go into Egypt and come out of Egypt so that the verse, out of Egypt have I called my son, could be fulfilled? Total nonsense.
All right.
Made up stories in order to make it look like Jesus was fulfilling scriptures which weren't even about a Messiah.
Wow.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, just a note to the viewers out there, we will be opening the phone lines shortly. So just if you got questions, sit on them for a few.
We're almost done.
Almost done, and we'll take a few calls before we end the show tonight. So just sit tight. Sit tight. Go ahead.
Okay. And the sign is you'll find the babe be wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. Verse 13 of Luke. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. By the way, just so you'll know, a very good friend of mine is a PhD in Greek and New Testament studies, used to teach at Houston Baptist University. He's now teaching at Wheaton College, and he tells me that's not what the Greek says.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Instead of glory to God in the highest and on earth peace, goodwill toward men, what the Greek actually says, according to him, is glory to God in the highest and on earth peace to men of goodwill.
Interesting.
Okay, not a big deal. I just thought I'd point that out. Okay, verse 15. And it came to pass as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said one to another, Let's go now go to Bethlehem and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us. They came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all they that heard it wondered at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Why does Mary have to ponder them in her heart? Wasn't she told about the Annunciation? Wasn't she told? And we started a little too early in Luke, by the way, but we didn't have it. But in Luke, Mary is told she's going to become pregnant by the Holy Spirit. But in Matthew, only Joseph is told that Mary. Okay, yes, and I forgot to include that in our discussion. Go look it up yourself. Don't believe me. Look all this up yourself. Okay. So Mary pondered it in her heart. Let's see. Okay, verse 20. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, and it was told unto them. Now, when a Jewish boy is born, he has the circumcision on the 8th day. If he is the first to open the womb, there's a ritual called Pidyon Haben, which means redeeming the firstborn. What is that all about? Just real quickly, in the ancient world, the firstborn child of every family became the priests of their god. For example, quickly, and this could be a whole nother class. Every single plague of the 10 plagues against Egypt were actually against the gods of Egypt, not against the people of Egypt.
Right.
And the 10th one, the killing of the firstborn, what did that accomplish? First of all, it got rid of the next god because Pharaoh was considered to be a god. Hey, William, imagine that, a human being god. But it kills off the next god, and it also kills off the next god's priests, which are the firstborn of the land. So the 10th plague was against another god, namely Pharaoh.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, okay. Because of that the Jewish boys were saved, okay, they were consecrated to God, and they were supposed to serve in the temple like all the other pagan gods. Oh, wait a minute. God says, but these firstborn sons you're going to redeem, because I have the Levites who are going to serve in the temple. I don't need the firstborn of every family. But they get redeemed. How do they get redeemed? A certain amount of money is given to a Kohen, a priest, to basically buy them back from having to serve in the temple. And that custom, going back to Exodus, is preserved even to this day. So what we're going to see in the text here, after the shepherds returned, verse 21, and when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Remember, Mary is told, and Joseph is told that the child is going to be called Jesus, not Emmanuel. Okay?
Right.
Now, all right. Okay, verse 22. And when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. That's the Pidyon Haben, the redeeming of the firstborn. And to offer a sacrifice according to all which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves and 2 young pigeons. And behold, and here we're going to have miracle stories. We're going to have a few incidental little things that help indicate that Jesus really was in fact the Messiah. So verse 25, and behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and the same man was just and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him, and it was revealed unto him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's anointed, the Lord's Christ. And he came by the Spirit into the temple, and when the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him after the custom of the law, then he took him up in his arms and blessed God and said, Lord, now let thou thy servant depart in peace according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation. So they make up this story about this guy who was told by God, you won't die till you see the Messiah, and then behold, all of a sudden Jesus is there for him. And he says, now you can let me die because your word has been fulfilled. Okay?
Got it.
Okay. Verse 32. This continues. Okay, verse 31. Which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people Israel. And Joseph and his mother marveled at those things which were spoken of their Jesus, their son. Why would they marvel?
True. They were supposed to know this already, yeah.
Exactly. They both have been told by an angel of God that God himself was making Mary pregnant. Okay, Mary is the chosen mother of the Messiah. Why would they marvel at what they're being told about Jesus? Because it should, obviously that's going to be true. Okay, verse 34. And Simon blessed them all and said unto Mary his mother, behold, this child is set for the fall and rising again of many in Israel, and for a sign which shall be spoken against. Yea, a sword shall pierce through thy own soul also, that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed. Now there's another story, and there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel, the tribe of Aser, probably Asher is what that meant. She was of a great age and had lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity. So from very young to this very old age, she'd had only one husband. And she was a widow of about 84 years, that is 84 years, right, which departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayer night and day. In other words, she basically never left the temple. She was there in devotion. And she, coming in that instant, gave thanks likewise to the Lord, and spoke of him to all that looked for redemption in Jerusalem. And when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, in other words, they'd done the circumcision, they waited till Mary was past her purification from having given birth, they waited for the redemption of the firstborn. All those things have been done. Verse 39, and when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own city Nazareth. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover, and when he was 12 years old, wait a minute, what happened to the story of where he's 2, according to what they're telling us, and he goes into Egypt and comes up to Nazareth? It's gone. It's not there. If Christians are going to say Matthew was 2 years later than Luke, then why does Luke completely skip that story and go straight from birth to being 12 years old?
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
The whole thing is interesting because you cannot create a single narrative that explains every aspect of this, because there's too much contradiction and too much of it simply makes no sense. Mm-hmm. Like having to go to your home city where you were born in order to be counted in a census in order to know how much taxes you owe. Okay.
Interesting. For sure.
All right. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast, and when they had fulfilled the days as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother didn't know it. Wait a minute. They only have one kid, and they're leaving, and they don't realize that he's not with them? What really good parenting that is.
I was thinking the same thing years ago. I was like, oh my God. That's interesting. Again.
Yep. Okay, 44. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among the kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back to Jerusalem seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the sages, doctors, whatever, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. He's 12 years old, but boy, he really knows the Bible cold. And when they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, Son, why have you thus dealt with us? Behold, your father and I have sought thee sorrowing. In other words, why did you come with us? Why did you scare us like that? Okay, his answer, and he said unto them, How is it that you sought me? Were you not, didn't you know that I must be about my father's business? And they understood not the saying which they spoke to him, which he spoke to them. Well, wait a minute. Again, it goes back to this thing up there, why the parents were so surprised. If they had the Annunciation, okay, if they knew this was the Messiah, if they knew all the special things about their son and the trying to kill the firstborn, everybody of the age that he would have been, why would they be surprised at all this? Right. Again, it makes no sense.
Right. Interesting.
Okay. So you have all these details of Matthew where there's peace and a star and goes from Bethlehem to Egypt to Nazareth. They're wise men, and they were in their home city, no need for an inn. Whereas in Mark, there's no birth story at all. In Luke, it's a time of peace and tranquility, not a time of fear. There's no mention of a star. They have shepherds come to visit Jesus instead of wise men or magi. They go from Nazareth to Bethlehem to Nazareth. And they were coming to Bethlehem but lived in Nazareth, so that's why they needed an inn, plus all the little other things that were disagreeing with each other. And then finally in the Gospel of John, okay, it's just this weird, look, I've told you before, William, I don't understand mysticism. I'm not a Kabbalist. I don't get it. So maybe that's why I don't understand this mystical speech of John chapter 1, verse 1. Okay, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, but the dark couldn't understand it. Okay, in the beginning was knowledge, in the beginning was understanding, the beginning was, however you want to understand what the Word is. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So was the Word God, or was it only with God at the same time? And they'll say, it's the miracle of the great mystery, the Trinity.
Mm-hmm, right.
And then all of a sudden, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth, and goes on from there. Here's why I bring this up. First you have Mark, then you have Matthew and Luke, then you have John. The older the story is, the older Jesus is when he comes on the scene. What do I mean by that?
Right.
In Mark, he's an adult. In Matthew and Luke, he comes on the scene as an infant.
Infant.
Okay. And in John, he is the Messiah even before he becomes incarnated as Jesus.
Wow.
You see, the later the story is written, the further back they put Jesus' existence. It is a collection of contradictions. It's a collection of making up verses in order to, and then create a story to show how Jesus fit that verse. Okay, it's making up stories to fit verses that never even had anything to do with the Messiah. And you can't take fact for fact for fact for fact from Matthew, combine them with fact for fact for fact for fact of Luke, and put them in together into a single narrative and cover everything, because it's too complicated, too contradictory, and simply can't be done.
Very true.
I hope that was all clear and not too boring.
No, not at all. Not at all. But I will tell you this. We are effectively now, phone lines are open. So I don't know how many calls we can take. However, we will try to take your calls. So if you would like to give us a call. I said they're open. Give me 1 second. Remind me later. Everything wants to update all the time. Give me a break already. Okay, so, phone lines are open. Phone numbers on your screen, 855-95-BIBLE, 855-952-4253. So, let me turn this down so it doesn't blast us all out of the studio. I do know that Sean Kanan had a question he wanted to ask, and so we'll find out. So, we'll give it just about 2 minutes. If the phone hasn't rang in less than a couple minutes, then we may go ahead and tune this thing
All
down.
right. I'm going to... Okay, now let's take a look at the live chat.
I was thinking again about the star, right? Me and my kids
Star of beauty, star of night. No, sorry.
We were out in the front yard, gosh, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. It was really clear outside. And I was trying to point up at a certain star, right? I mean, I couldn't even point at a star that they could see. I mean, I literally had to take a super high powered laser that shines like, several miles in the sky just to get them even close. So the fact that they could actually see a star with their naked eye without a laser, without anything, and that just doesn't make any sense at all. There's your call. Shalom, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hi, I'm David from London.
David from London, welcome to the show, sir. What's the question for Rabbi?
Hi. So it's not really particular to do with Christmas. It's a question which I asked once, but he might have to sort of prepare for it. So maybe if it's able to prepare for it next week or something, then the question, the whole Daniel. I know there's loads of these Christian prophecies, like 300, like loads of them, and one of them is the Daniel one. It's really complicated, but he's like a brilliant person to ask because it's always so to the point. He will just sort of be able to summarize what is this prophecy that Christians claim is in Daniel regarding the Messiah.
Daniel chapter 1, you said?
Complicated one. Pardon?
Did you say Daniel 1?
It might be Daniel chapter 9. I don't know. It's something to do with
probably
Daniel.
7 or 9, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I did ask once before, but it was sort of, it might require some preparation because it's such a big, because it's like the sort of the big one that they use that's really sort of intricate with all these little things. So if he needs to prepare them, maybe perhaps next week, then perhaps he could let me know. But that's my question really.
Okay. I think we didn't.
All right, and you're right, by the way. It's a very complicated thing. They're trying to take Daniel and use Daniel's statement as a way to show that the timing of the coming of Jesus was according to a schedule that Daniel speaks of. And it's just very weird.
Right.
But seriously, that would take so much. That'd take a whole show, really.
Right. Might be a good topic to tackle. Like Daniel 970 weeks is another one that's really good to dissect. So. Well,
I think that's what he's referring to.
Okay, so what is?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just asking you if it's possible to do it at some show at all with Rabbi Federow.
Absolutely.
It'd be so great to hear.
Gotcha.
Absolutely, that's not a problem at all. It is complicated, and it's made more complicated by how Christians try to manipulate it. But we'll get to that.
Okay, I will, however, have Rabbi comment on 722. So thanks for calling in, my friend.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Thanks, Dave. Bye. Yeah, 722.
You said Daniel 7.
Yeah, 22. Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High.
Right. Well, this is a statement clearly about the Messiah. Okay. Wait, 22?
Yes, 722.
Yeah, but that's a reference back a few verses.
Okay, guy. I just scanned it and I saw it just now.
7:14.
Oh yeah, actually, that's the one. 7:14. Right.
Yeah, 13:14. I saw in the night vision, behold, one like a son of man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. They brought him near before him, and there was given to him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, one which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Okay, this is a messianic image that they're creating, where the Messiah is a human being. That's why he's called a son of man, Ben Adam. Okay, that's language of a human being as opposed to God.
Right.
Okay, he is presented before the Ancient of Days, which is a reference to God. So you've got a human being presented to God, and to him is given dominion and glory and kingdom. And listen carefully, that all people, nations, and languages should serve this person. Okay? Excuse me, what did Jesus say repeatedly? I came not to serve, I came not to be served, but to serve others.
Okay, right.
So Daniel 7:14 says all people, nations, and languages are going to serve the Messiah. But Jesus says, I came not to be served, but I came to be the one who serves you.
Interesting.
So Jesus contradicts Daniel 7:14
that's crazy.
by saying that, I'm going to die for your sins rather than I'm going to be a king who's going to be worshipped and obeyed by the people. That's a contradiction there. Jesus is contradicting what Daniel 7:14 says the Messiah is supposed to do. Furthermore, it says his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. When did Jesus ever have a kingdom?
Right. He never did. Right.
When did he have dominion over the earth?
Right. That definitely never happened. Right.
When did he have a kingdom that would never be destroyed? He never had a kingdom to begin with. And they'll say, oh, well, he rules when people give themselves to him. That's not what the text says. What the text says is that all people, nations, and languages will serve him. He will have dominion and glory and a kingdom, and that dominion and glory and kingdom will be eternal. So Daniel 7:13-14 is completely contradicted by what Jesus himself said and what Jesus himself did.
Wow. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. I mean, every stone you turn over, it's just another fallacy somewhere,
Let's see if I can.
Okay, while you're seeing, I'm going to look underneath this table right here and get this up here for you guys out there and YouTube land, Judaism and Christianity: A Contrast. I will talk about this book every single show, so if you get tired of hearing it, just go on the chat for a few minutes while I advertise for Rabbi. Okay, so this is it right here. Very easy read. You can get it on Kindle. He also has a website. It's got a telephone app. I think I can show you this app now because I've got a different camera hooked up. If you haven't seen it before, bear with me one momentus. I just realized I got a message from our website designer. Let's take this call. I'm not gonna let the caller talk just yet because I'm gonna finish what I needed to do here. Okay, so Jewish Mission Control. Let me do something. I'm gonna get over here real fast. Hang on. I gotta pull this camera close to me. Okay. Because I want to switch cameras here just 1 second because sometimes it's just easier for me to do this than it is for. Why is that on screen? Rabbi, you're like right in the middle of my screen. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's put you here. Y'all can see Rabbi like right up in the left corner. Okay, so if you look right here on the other side, right there, this is the Facebook app that just went black. Get back on. How do I do that? There it is. Right here. Jewish Mission Control. Right there. Okay? It's on Android. It's also on Apple. It's just like the website. It's too bright. It's actually having a hard time reading all this. Oh, there you go. You can see all the topics here. All you got to do is click.
Matthew 20:28.
Click on one of these, any of these, original sin, whatever. It'll take you to the page with all the answers on it. Jewish Mission Control. You got to download the app. It's free. And also, whatjewsbelieve.org is where you're going to go to also to find Rabbi's website. And you'll find this link at the bottom. You'll find his book available at the bottom. If you don't have it, get it. You're missing out. Okay, so caller, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name. Where are you calling from?
Excuse me, before he does that, take a look at Matthew 20:28. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus in Matthew 20:28 is where I was referring to.
Okay, Matthew 20.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hang on 1 second. Matthew, look it up right now, 20:28. Okay, I got it. Let me put it on the screen real fast. Caller, bear with me just a minute, please.
Okay. Oh, you don't have to put it on the screen. I mentioned it. Let's go on.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to see it too, so that'll be cool. Okay. All right, caller, we'll try this again. Tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hi, it's me again.
Oh, hey. Yes, sir.
London.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask about this question of the historical. So, for example, I often hear the argument made that Jesus is the most well-attested to historical character in ancient history, and nobody disputes the fact that he was that he lived and that he even that he was and then there's the thing about him being witnessed to have been resurrected. Like, apparently this is so well attested to, and so everybody pretty much, according to these Christian debaters I've heard, that they often say that everybody sort of, there's no question that he was seen to have resurrected.
Right.
People thought that they saw he was resurrected, and so the argument has to be that they must have been deluded or something like that. But is this really so well attested to historically?
I will tell you this.
I know the big argument against Christianity already is the fact that it's not the Torah is eternal and that they're overturning that. So I know Christianity is wrong, but I'm just with that particular argument about the existence of Jesus and the people who think that they saw him resurrected. I want to ask about that.
That's cool, and I will tell you this that kind of goes along with it, because you hear debaters all the time, and even scholars saying things all the time, and some of the stuff is just flat out lies. They're just flat out things that come off their lips that really are not hard facts like they say they are. I'll give you an example. I saw a debate between Rabbi Singer and some pastor years ago, and this pastor was saying, well, it's very clear in blah, blah, blah in this book, and Rabbi Singer was like, he goes, no, it's not. He goes, show me anywhere. He goes, it's there. He goes, no, it's not. He goes, okay, you're right, it's not there. Right in the middle of a debate. They will say whatever they want to. It's kind of like playing, what is that game that you play, Rabbi, where you Scrabble, I guess you can create a word, and if nobody challenges you, then you get the points for it. That's kind of how a lot of these debate stuff works, you know. And so, Rabbi, you're going to take this one away, because I know where you're headed with this. This is going to be great. And David, that's a really great question. And so I'm going to put Rabbi at full screen and let him just go to town on this one. Thank you.
Well, it's basically what you said. Every single historian of the Roman period, if they mention Jesus at all, which is a question, what they are talking about is not Jesus himself, but the religion that came about believing in Jesus. Okay, Josephus has two paragraphs that refer to Jesus. Okay, the first paragraph, every scholar on planet Earth knows that it's a fake. And why? It's because it begins with saying, and there came a man, if he can even be called a man, and his name was Jesus. You know, it's this flowery, overzealous, I don't know what to call it, praising of Jesus, okay, which Josephus himself simply wouldn't do as a historian. Okay, Jesus the man, if he can even be called a man. Okay, then there's another paragraph, which most people do believe was actually Josephus's writing, and it's really talking about the phenomenon of Christianity, of Christians, not necessarily really about Jesus himself, but the effect of Jesus, which you can have an effect. You can have believers of Zeus. It doesn't mean Zeus exists. You can have phenomenons that take place as a result of believers in Zeus. It doesn't mean Zeus exists. And almost every single reference to Jesus is not really a reference to Jesus himself. It's a reference to the Christianity created about Jesus. So there's an awful lot of what's the word? Incredulity, disbelief that Jesus is even mentioned outside of the New Testament itself by any scholar or Roman historian of his own day. And when they mention him, it's usually a mentioning about the Christianity, the religion about Jesus, rather than a mention of Jesus himself.
Right.
Now, William, is that where you thought I was heading? Is that what you thought I was going to say?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, because if I missed something or left something out, bring it up. Don't. This is you and me both. Remember?
Right.
Right. Okay.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Wow. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Again, we mentioned it earlier. The same topic is like, oh, you know what I heard? I heard Bart Ehrman one time said. He said if you have one witness who told the story to 25 other people, you don't have 25 witnesses. You still only have one witness. And,
one witness.
And that's the account of the New Testament, is you have one person, Paul, or whoever it is, telling the story to everyone else. Therefore, now you've got all these witnesses. It doesn't work that way. You know?
Yeah. Okay. There's talk on the live chat going back a ways that I want to cover. And it's a reference to the verse in the New Testament about, what was it again? About Nazareth. Where to go?
Below says, did the color get cut off? And I don't think so, because he finished his question. And likewise, anytime a question gets asked or finished up, I'll disconnect so they can watch in. So, David, if you're out there and you think I did cut you off, please let me know. Call me back and let me know if I forgot or just type it in here. Let us know if I actually did cut you off, and if I did, tell me what the remainder part of your question would be. Let's see. Oh, yeah, you don't hear any callers. You won't hear any callers interacting unless they actually call them or actually engaging with them. So, that's all. So, it's all good. Oh, I know why she's saying that. I forgot. They're watching a delay of the video. That's why. Because when David came on, he started talking, and I turned his mic down. That's what it was. Okay, so no, keep listening if you haven't seen it yet. That's funny. Okay, here we go. Actually, that's David. Let's see what we got to clarify. Hey, Shalom, welcome back.
Hi, it's David again.
Yes, sir. Did I cut you off?
Yeah, after the question, yes, I couldn't sort of interact with the answer.
Gotcha. I didn't know. Well, okay, yeah, sorry about that. I usually once we get a question, and usually we just kind of disconnect, and that way they have a question. Okay. I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's the idea of the New Testament as that they look at as a historical document. So, for example, even like some Christians, they don't actually care so much if there's even a slight error in the New Testament, because they don't necessarily believe it's word for word perfect, but they'll look at it as a historical document, kind of as a historian, and then say, okay, so this is evidence of Jesus. So it's not so much just Josephus or it's their main sort of historical source would be the New Testament.
So Rabbi,
one argument back would be the contradictions.
Right. So Rabbi, is it possible that the New Testament could be a historical document?
I'll
right?
just add also
No.
There's an idea in the historical method of having multiple contemporary sources that and so they'd say that the New Testament is so very much within the memory of when he would have lived.
But the problem is there aren't any documents. I mean, the only documents that we know that are out there is the New Testament documents and Josephus, which had a forgery in like maybe a half a page forgery that wasn't even his input to begin with. There were no other historians that wrote about Jesus. So their claims that there are, they need to really produce these documents.
Let us see them.
Yeah.
And what they will produce are paragraphs or sentences that really are talking about the phenomenon of Christianity,
right? Not
about the historical existence of a person named Jesus or a person named, whatever he was named as, but described in the New Testament. In terms of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Suppose the only real his so-called historical documents they have is the New Testament. I'm just wondering.
Exactly, and I wouldn't call them historical. I would explicitly call them religious documents. The reason is because, as we went over tonight, just with the birth story of Jesus, okay, and we did the same thing with the Passover narrative, what's called the Passion narrative at Passover time. The contradictions are so blatant and impossible to make them coincide. We don't know what was true about Jesus. We don't know what was in the New Testament that is actually a factual statement of anything that Jesus said, anything Jesus did. We have no way of knowing because the documents of the New Testament were written by believers, and they were written to prove and to show that belief. So it's very... I think it's impossible to view the New Testament in any way, shape, or form as historical documents. That's one thing. Wait, I'm talking about the Gospels here. I don't see how they can be considered historical documents, because we don't know what part of it is historical and not made up.
There's not enough of it that corresponds with each other correctly.
And there's an organization called, what's it called? The Jesus, I can't remember what it was. There are something like 80, I don't remember how many scholars of Christian scholars who are trying to find the verses that are actually historical to Jesus, and they vote on their opinion on what is or is not historical. And one of the criteria for determining if a verse is historical is if the verse taken literally contradicts what Christians believe about Jesus, that they'll say is historical.
David, let me ask you.
But if it goes along with Christian theology, especially of the immediate, the time period immediately after Jesus, then they'll say, oh, that was made up and put in there. So even they don't know what they're doing. They're just going by personal opinion, scholarly opinion, but opinion nevertheless.
Right.
So I wouldn't consider the New Testament to be history at all, but rather religious documents created by believing Christians to prove their religion to be true, or to explain or respond to objections about their religion. You've got Mark, but you've got no lineage in Mark, and the Messiah is supposed to be able to trace his lineage back to King David through King Solomon without going through certain people. So Matthew, hearing of this objection to Mark, creates his lineage. Luke also hears the criticism of Mark, and so he creates his lineage. But the two lineages don't jive with each other, because they're invented in order to answer the question, what's the lineage of Jesus, and how does he prove he's from the house of David?
Right. Okay. David,
what would you say to somebody who said that you'll tend to have, sometimes even with eyewitness testimony in a court, there could be contradictions?
Because the contradictions are not where one person says it's a dark blue and the other person says, no, it's black. The contradictions aren't that the car was going 80 miles an hour, no, it's only going 60 miles an hour. They're both agreeing that the car was moving.
Right.
If one says the car was stationary and the other one says, no, it was going 80 miles an hour,
now you got a problem.
It's an irreconcilable difference.
Right.
And the issues that are raised, the differences that are raised between the four gospel stories are not the one says it's blue and the other one says it's black. They're contradictions that cannot be reconciled.
Right.
Quick question. Okay. And there are even more obvious and more blatant contradictions. Quick question. What does it mean to have the last words of someone? It means the last words they spoke before giving up the ghost, before dying, before kicking the bucket, before whatever euphemism you want to use for dying. It's the last words they speak before they die. What were the last words of Jesus? One says, it is finished, and he gave up the ghost. And that's Luke. The other one, John says, into thy hands do I commit my spirit, and he gave up the ghost. Well, no, wait a minute. If the spoken words before giving up the ghost, meaning he died, meaning he kicked the bucket, meaning he passed away, however you want to understand the word to die, when it says he gave up the ghost, that means he died. And one says the last words were, it is finished, and the other one says the last words were, unto thy hands I commend my spirit. You can't have it both ways.
You can't
and they are
resolve
an
that.
Irreconcilable difference.
I mean, to really make it a little bit more clear, it is finished in one gospel. Maybe the other one, maybe another gospel could have said, I am blemished. Okay, that's pretty close. There's three words that sound similar.
Right.
That could have happened. But one says three words, it is finished, and the other one says, unto thy hands I commit. I mean, you've got a paragraph spoken or a long sentence so it is. It's irreconcilable,
and the content,
right? And
the meaning is different. It's
right.
You cannot reconcile these differences. They are clear. They are concise. They are words spoken by Jesus just before giving up the ghost according to the verses themselves.
Right.
They're incompatible, contradictory to each other, and cannot be reconciled.
Man. David, I'm glad you called back.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
That's some good topics, man.
But by the way, the next question you want to ask, taught to me by Rabbi Tovia Singer, okay? Was Mary told that Jesus was resurrected, or was she not told that Jesus was resurrected when she goes to the grave? Look it up yourself.
Interesting.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Shalom Aleichem.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
I learned that from Tovia Singer.
Yeah, that was a really
You were
deep
with
one.
us,
Yeah.
William.
Yeah, oh, that was, man, I wish that was a recorded event. He said
Well, you're
so
not kidding.
many things on that 2-hour round
He
trip.
is so brilliant. It is
I was like, why?
inspiring to me.
I was like, why couldn't we catch 5 minutes of this to put on
Yeah,
air?
really.
It was just so rich, man. It was so rich. Okay, let's take this call. Caller, welcome to the show. Please tell
wanna
us your
cover something
name
real quick.
and where you're calling from. And actually, tell us your name, where you're calling from. Rabbi, don't forget what you were going to say.
Oh, I won't.
Hey, this is Ron. I'm calling from New York.
Hey, Ron.
Just wanted to say thanks. This show has been really important to me. I've been in the process for 3 or 4 years now, and I have a question that I'm not comfortable, maybe asking people in my community about, so I
Sure.
figured you guys would be good to answer this.
If we know.
When I'm trying to remember whether it's the Amidah or I can't really remember, but at a certain point you say the word Yeshua in the context that it means redemption. And
Okay.
Right.
I just cringe when I say that word because I know what it means, and I lived a former life as a Christian. Can you replace that word, or is it just always going to be an
Well,
uncomfortable
if
word
you
for me
replace
to
the
say?
word, you're no longer following the prayer book. You're now making a change in the religious spiritual life of the Jewish people as defined by the words that are used in the prayer book. And I understand what you're saying because of this whole perversion of Yeshua and misuse and misrepresentation of it. I got news for you. There are times when I run across that same word while I'm praying, and I have the same
Gut reaction.
same reaction,
Right.
because these Christians have taken our Hebrew word, mispronounced it, misrepresented it, okay, misunderstand it, and they're trying to use it as a name for Jesus, and it never was.
Right.
It never was. Yeshua is not the same as Yeshua. His lingua franca, his spoken language of his day was Aramaic. In Aramaic, in the day he spoke it, the what's the fancy term? Guttural. I can't think of the word. The ion on the end is a deep guttural, and it's a I can't think of the word. Okay,
okay.
But
Can't either.
it's so slight.
Right.
Okay, like they say Yeshua. Well, in the Aramaic of that day, the ion that's on the end of a word was dropped, and even if it was spelled with no vowels, Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin, it would have been pronounced Yeshu.
Right.
Okay, and Christians will say,
Okay, so
"Oh
we
no,
aren't
that was made
actually
up because
pronouncing the
Yeshu
name of
means
a false god.
Yimach Shemo Zichrono. May he and his memory be blotted out." That's not how things work.
Right.
Okay, first, William, I'm using you. Aren't you lucky? First, you get the name William, then you get the name Bill.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
first you get the name, then you get the nickname that comes from it. So first his name was Yeshu, pronounced Yeshu, because that's how the Aramaic name would have been pronounced. And then you get a later rabbis who were making fun of him by making it stand for something else. Okay, but Yeshua, he was never called in his life. Grammatically, it would have been Yeshua. Okay, but it was Aramaic, not Hebrew, and therefore would have been Yeshu.
You know, one thing that
Even if it would have been spelled out with the ayin, it was not pronounced.
one thing you could think
Okay.
about it from a different perspective now is Christianity and Messianic Judaism has basically stolen that name and applied it to their God.
Exactly.
Now you can do one of two things. You could let them keep it, or you can take that name back and put it back in its proper context. So if you try to avoid using it, you're basically letting them keep that name they stole. We need to take that back and start using it in its proper context, and before you know it, it'll start feeling more natural to you, and not so
And the word
gut-wrenching.
Yeshua, he was never called. It had been Yeshua.
Right. Nor was he told to be
And-
called that either.
And right, he was supposed to be Emmanuel,
Yeah,
as we
right.
talked about tonight.
Right.
Okay.
All right, awesome. That makes me feel a lot better. Thank
All
you.
right,
Cool.
I hope it does, but I know exactly how you feel. Okay, it's one more time where they're taking something that's ours, and I would love to have anyone, show me a Messianic Jews for Jesus, Hebrew Christian, whatever you want to call it, document from 500 years ago where they called Jesus Yeshua in that document.
Right.
The calling Jesus Yeshua, the earliest that could go back to would probably be the 1950s.
Wow.
Okay, I'd like to see a document in Christianity from the 1800s where they said that the name of Jesus would have been Yeshua. Just show it to me.
Right.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the Messianic movement didn't even happen until this last 100 years sometime, 50,
It
60
really
years.
didn't. They'll say, oh, well, there were always Jews who converted to Christianity. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, that's true.
Right.
But they were never called Messianics.
Right.
They were called Hebrew Christians. Okay. And it's really a phenomenon that's only like maybe 1800s.
Yeah.
Okay. You always had Jews converting to Christianity, just like you always had Christians converting to Judaism and becoming Jews. But the Jews who converted to Christianity didn't have synagogues just for them, called Messianic synagogues. Okay. They would be absorbed into a church. They were never distinguished or set apart. They never had their own clubs, their own organizations, their own religious meetings, their own, and they didn't have a Saturday morning Shabbat service. That is a modern phenomenon created by Martin Rosen, who was a Baptist minister 12 years before he created an organization to missionize the Jews, which he renamed Jews for Jesus. Originally, it was the American Board of Missions to the Jews, as a result of reading a book by Donald McGavran called Understanding Church Growth, where he talks about faking people out by making it look like you're not leaving your ethnic group or culture by becoming Christian, to entice them to become Christian. So it's a modern phenomenon, and they're the ones who invented this whole Yeshua stuff.
Well, listen, brother, thank you for calling in, and welcome out. It was about 3 years that it took me to finally come out like publicly. So after 2 to 3 years, Passover kept revisiting me on this one, and that was my trigger. But yeah, it took me about 3 years before I finally came out. Also, from the first time I started really questioning it. So keep studying. You're doing a great job, man. And welcome home, basically.
Awesome. Have a great night.
Really,
Okay.
welcome home.
Bye.
Take care. Wow, cool. We got time for one more question.
All right, well, before we get to the question, I just want to. They're talking about the use of the word Nazareth.
Oh, I saw that. Yes, please.
Nazarene.
Please go there.
Okay,
Go there.
Nazarite and all this, and it's very confusing, and it's also very bad Hebrew grammar.
Don't say
Okay,
it. Yep.
when they say that he shall be called a Nazarite, okay, they make up the verse and then show a story why he fulfilled that verse, because nowhere does any prophet say he shall be called a Nazarene. They'll say, well, it comes from the word branch. No, that word is netzer. It's a tzadi, not a zion. Okay, and Nazarite, as Kelsey Lynn wrote, Nazarite is a vow that you take. It's not a tribe, it's not a community, it's not a group of people, it's not a nation, city, state, county, whatever. It's a kind of a vow that one takes. And in order to obfuscate, in order to hide and whatever this fact that this verse is never to be found, they start making up, well, it really means he's like a Nazarite. It means he's a branch which is Netzer. And it's a confusion of words where they ignore the difference in Hebrew between letters. You know, you change one letter in Hebrew, you change the whole meaning of the word. We have R-E-D and R-E-A-D. It's pronounced the same way, but it's still got the R and the D. Okay, red and red. Okay.
Same with the vowels. Same with the vowels.
Sorry?
I said same thing goes with the vowels too. You know.
And you change the vowels, you change the meaning of the word.
Yeah. I mean, it's like hat, heat, hate. Even in English, that changes it just by changing the vowels.
Exactly.
You know? So
that's a good example too, by the way, William. Good.
Thank you, sir.
That's good. So Nazareth is a town, okay, and there are many scholars who say that the town of Nazareth didn't exist at the time of Jesus. That's a whole historical question, okay? Mm-hmm. They'll say it means that he was a Nazarite, and that means, but that's a value take. It's not a town you come from, and it still must be said that there is no prophet who says, quote, and he shall be called a Nazarene. It just doesn't exist. So, at any rate.
Wow. Well, it has been fun.
Always is.
It's been fun. It's been good. Oh, wow. Thanks for sticking around.
I hope we didn't bore everybody with the Christmas story contradictions.
I kindly doubt that just a little bit. So, a lot of good feedback on YouTube. There was a lot of viewers tonight, which was good. And, be sure, all you viewers out there, be sure to tell everybody else, too. We're going to start picking back up every week again. So, like I said, there might be a chance from time to time that we don't because either me out of town or Rabbi busy.
Or I'm out of town or whatever.
Something, but we're going to try to get back on right away. So, we'll see you guys like 1 week from today, Monday night, 8 p.m. So, don't miss it. And I think I mentioned it once here. Yeah. Okay. So I think I mentioned it here as well as other shows. When you go and subscribe to the YouTube channel, a lot of people still keep asking me, William, how come I don't get alerts whenever you record? You literally have to turn on the notifications on YouTube. If you've already subscribed, if you haven't subscribed, look for the subscribe button. If you have subscribed, once you click the subscribe button, you have to click the little bell next to it to turn on the notifications. Otherwise, you're not going to get notified. If you do click that, then every single time I click record, you're going to instantly get an email saying, hey, TORAH Talk is recording. So that way you can find out what it is. So you'll want to do that for sure. And again, don't forget about Rabbi's book, Judaism and Christianity, A Contrast.
Oh, wait. So I subscribe, and I have to click the bell next to the word subscribed?
Yes. And click the bell.
And then
it
makes it look like it's ringing to show that it's on?
Well, if it's already on, if you've already clicked it, I'm not sure what it looks like. I just know that when you click subscribe, you also have to go over to the bell, click it, and a dialog box will pop up, and it'll ask you to verify, do you want to get notifications from this channel? And you say yes, and then you're set.
Okay.
So try it on another video stream. So let's see. When it's clicked, it looks like it's ringing. So that means if you see it and it looks like it's ringing, thank you, Jason.
We have two little lines on the side of the bell.
Yeah, I'm sorry to clear my throat.
Right.
So
cool.
Yeah, awesome. Cool, man.
You're right. I had forgotten to click that too, by the way. Thank you.
Hey, very, very good. I should click it myself. I don't even know when I'm recording sometimes. Oh man. Okay, cool. So anyway, go to the website, subscribe to. I don't even know if you can subscribe to a website. Can you? What do you do when you go to? I don't know. Go to TORAHTalk.com and look to see if there's something that interests you. If it is, click it. That's all I got to say about that. So, and there's a little PayPal button at the bottom. If you decide you want to partner with me and help me through this little journey, Rabbi. So anyway, let's get off here. You guys, it's been a long night. Love seeing you guys, seeing all the questions.
I think
great
this is probably
activity.
One of the longest we've ever made.
This is also, I think, one of my favorite ones. And that's what I'm saying right there. So you guys have a great, great rest of your week, and we'll see you on the other side. Shalom, shalom. Take care, everybody.
אני אתה אתם תמיד תמיד כולם ביחד חשוב כל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה והתמיהה.
חושבים, דוברים, לובשים בכל האופנים, זה טבעם של אנשים שונים.
נזכור בסוף כולנו שותפים,
חשוב תמיד להיות אנושיים. חושבים, דוברים, לובשים